see here. This is a little low. Okay, that can go up a little bit. All right. So, if you didn't see it last night, after taking about a 6 or 7 week break, I decided to play tournaments yesterday, and the result was a 11-hour stream where, in the end, I was able to pull out the win in the $6.60 entry, 5K guaranteed, progressive knockout tournament, which I'm really proud of because I've studied the progressive knockout format, and my general theory is that at the micros especially, it's more than a math problem. I think it's one of those things, it's like playing cash games on WSOP. I think that kind of built up my outlook and skill in the thing. Because the thing about progressive knockouts is that when you're facing an all-in, right, it's not just what the player puts out in front of them. It's also their bounty that counts. So essentially, every let's say somebody's bounty is equal to their buy-in, right? Like the bounty is $6.60, let's just say. That means that you can add to the pot when figuring if you should call the amount of chips that they start out with. So if the person has 200,000 chips and you start the tournament with 100,000 chips, but they also have a 660 bounty and they jam all in, and you're thinking about making a call, well, you have to count their chips as 300,000 because the value of their chips is increased by the size of their bounty. This is the way that the math is done for progressive knockouts in the current theory. But the thing of it is, people, I think, overemphasize that. And when you're fighting in the micros, you have to not be in spots where you're at risk as much. There's a lot of what we usually call Phil Hellmuth moves, where you pass up good situations because of the long game where you can win the tournament. And there was about 5 or 6 instances yesterday, 2 of them on the final table that I can think of off the top of my head, where I gave up a spot that should be pretty standard because the person's bounty wasn't worth it. The risk was not worth the reward, and I ended up folding some really big hands pre-flop just to say, this is stupid. This is a race, and my feeling is I'm better than that. Why would I want to make the other players play perfectly? If you're playing against somebody you don't think you can beat by skill and skill alone, you have to force races. You have to force bigger pots. Worse players, or less educated players, let's say, should try to play bigger pots. More educated, more sophisticated players, players that play more fundamentally balanced poker, should be playing, most of the time, in my opinion, smaller pots. Because you have more control. You know, the average poker player doesn't understand that the way ranges line up. It doesn't understand that when I bet the flop and bet the turn and check the river, a lot of times it's because I know that if I bet, I can't get called by something that beats me. But if I check, I will induce a bluff from something worse. So I end up in these situations where it's just so much more positive for me. Average player doesn't understand that. Average player, you know, and this is not putting anybody down, knows that they have ace king and that getting it all in with ace king pre-flop is usually never wrong, as long as there's a little extra money in the pot. As long as you're not flipping exactly 50-50, like if there's a raise and they 3-bet jam, it's probably a great idea. But then again, it's not the way to consistently win poker tournaments, which is hard enough to do, by taking those risks. But when you're facing a player who can counteract everything else you're doing post-flop, it's kind of the move. So my feeling was I should avoid those spots and just go ahead and, you know, play intelligently. And it worked out really well. And I'm going to jump into the hand reviews. These are the tagged hands. These are some of the hands you're going to see in videos that I make and stuff like that. But then we're also going to go into the tournament when it gets deeper, because there's a lot of interesting situations that come up later. So let's just go through these first. So I'm going to have to show the chips in big blinds just to know which tournament this is in, but I'll go back and forth. So this is not the win, but this is a different one. So 8-9 suited, 70 blinds, very early on in this tournament. These tournaments are going in the order of play, so this is, super early. We go ahead and make a call of a pretty standard situation. Short stack here is kind of annoying, but, on the button, 8-9 suited, kind of easy. Pick up an 8 in the open ender, and we see this big bet, and it just kind of seems weak. When you bet this much into 3 players, it's like it's a one pair at best, basically. So we decide just to call because there are a lot of good bluffing opportunities. Even versus like aces here, there's a lot of good ones. Player bets half pot on the turn. I decide to go ahead and just call it again. River comes off a club, and now the opponent checks. And this is, to me, this is the perfect scenario. I feel like I had good equity. The open ender, I obviously think every one of my cards is good for me. A 9 even is good for me. You know what I'm saying? Unless I'm in this situation where the person has exactly pocket queens. I think a lot of times in this scenario, I'm up against the overpair. Or top pair, possibly. Because the way that the betting went, it was just far too aggressive. This player did have a shit ton of chips, but wasn't just a maniac. This player had hit some good hands, had played some good things, so I was kind of waiting for a situation similar to this. We're only about an hour into the tournament, I think. And me and him were the bigger stacks on the table, and he was just trying to push me out. Bigger, meaning above starting, like this is starting like 40. There's a couple bigger stacks. But I truly believe that an 8, a 9, a 7, a queen, all those cards are good for me. And the club is good for me too because it makes this perfect bluffing scenario, So even a queen is good for me, not just because of the straight, unless this player is exactly ace king, which I didn't think. But to me, this is just a really standard jam. There's a pot size bet left. I've been drawing, and if I'm a micros standard player, I don't understand. You're not supposed to draw for so much. We can just jam all in. And this 50 blinds is a lot. This player has a good stranglehold on the top, 10 spots in the tournament right now. And being that dominant, you don't want to just like throw away 50 blinds on one pair. So I really believe that this is a situation where I got a better hand to fold. So I jam all in, and he does fold. And the bet here is all in. Anytime the pot is bigger than what you got left, if you're betting less than what's in the pot, you're probably going to get called just because the stack to pot ratio is just way too big. So I like the jam. I think this is a good example of an opportunistic steal. I definitely did not have the best hand in this scenario. So I like it. Let's go on to the next one. Let's see here. Jack 8. We see a limp. This could be the bounty tournament. No. We see a limp. Pick up a gut shot. Player, I check. Player bets 1 big blind. Pretty standard. Gut shot's okay. Pick up the double gutty, which is nice. 5 or 9 now. Player bets super small again. And this is where the hand takes a turn for me. Betting 1 big blind on this flop is okay. It's a little small. Like this bet should be like 1 1/4. And I know it doesn't seem like much, but it kind of is a big deal because it's somebody not making an effort to size the bet. The person's just going, oh, I want to bet a third of the pot. There's 3.5. One's fine. One's fine. No, it's not. No, it's not. It reminds me of when somebody's just clicking a button rather than sizing their bet properly. It reminds me of something that I read in Super System, believe it or not, way back when in 2003. And it was Doyle Brunson talking about betting sizes. And he said that one of the most common tells that he saw was that when a player had a hand that had certain value to them, meaning, top pair or whatever, their bets were more calculated. They would sit there and count out a bet, and they would have knowledge of the pot and bet a certain percentage of the pot. Very standard. But when the player was bluffing, he said you might as well have just taken your hand, grabbed your chip stack and just put a bunch in the middle. You might as well just have went meh. And it just, he's like, they lost complete view of the pot, and he started realizing this, and he said it was a secret that he kept very close to his heart for a very long time, till he started hearing other players talk about it, how players would calculate a bet and you could tell what they had based on how much they bet, so you would just fold. But then they wouldn't use that same bet to bluff. They would just go, I bet a pile. You know what I'm saying? Like they wouldn't think it out because the hand had no real value to them. And then that time they didn't understand, well, if I had this hand, I would bet this much. That's the way you're supposed to think about it when you're representing a bluff. So that's what this came to me. This is the modern day version where you're online. This is the button click. So he bets one big blind. I just call it. The turn comes off, and we've got 5.5 in the middle, and player bets 1.29. This is a quarter pot bet. And the thing about this being a quarter pot bet is that, one, it's way too small to be anything good, and two, there's a quarter pot bet button on ACR. I saw this and I was like, yeah, no, sir. And I just went ahead and bet half pot, which now makes my bet match, very close to the pot that's in there. And I do have a ton of equity. Like a jack is probably good for me here. A 5 is probably good for me here. A 9 is definitely good for me here, meaning that I'm not going to chop those hands, the 5 or the 9. But in all honesty, I could have done this with anything if I had seen this betting pattern. I don't think I realized I even had as much equity as I had when I made the bet. Player folds. It's a nice little steal, and it's these little steals that kind of build up and give you more longevity in tournaments. This to me is very much so the same energy as stealing on the bubble, where these little pots will stack up over time. It's very nice. Let's go on to pocket nines. Why am I showing known hole cards? Oh, this is the monster. Okay. Different tournament, not the bounding tournament. I go ahead and make it 2 big blinds. This player makes it 7. I decide to just call. I remember this. This one I'm tagging for a video. So this player 3-bet me out of the small blind. Obviously, he's a monster stack, and he wanted to race. This one's going to be in a video. This is an interesting hand. He bets 5 big blinds, 1/3 pot standard. My feeling is the raise pre-flop was so big, and this bet is now so small. If you have something that does well on this board, I think you either check or you just bet it up. You bet 12 big blinds because you don't want me getting a free card off. This still leaves me with 18 blinds, which is, more than enough to get in. So I kind of reasoned this one out, and I jammed on the player, and he took a super long time to call, which to me is a victory, because it made him think about folding anything that I beat. And he did call eventually. I think he just realized that if he had a shot, he should take it. And he called, and, he hit the ace on me. But I was really proud of this hand because I think a lot of players would see the overcard after the 3-bet and be like, well, I got to be beat here. But realistically, what am I up against? So a 3-bet, okay? A 3-bet can definitely be king-queen. A 3-bet can definitely be ace-queen. Fine. It can be aces or kings. That's fine. It can be queens, sure, but there's one on the board. I'm not really worried about that. I'm not really worried about him having an 8. So there's not a lot of combinations of hands that actually beat me. There are a few combinations that I want to jam on. I think this is one of those ones where if the player has jacks or 10s and I jam from here, he can fold. You know what I'm saying? There's that little bit in there. And also the player can call with pairs that I beat. It's just one of those weird ones where when I jam in this scenario, there's a lot more good scenarios for me than bad ones. Now, granted, this flop is very draw heavy, so maybe he just decided to hero it because he thought I was on a flush draw, but it could have been the worst case scenario for him where I had the flush draw with the 2 overcards. We were sharing, but who knows? Either way, he made a bad call. I made a good play. I was very proud of it. It'll be in a video. Ace Jack. I want to get to the ones. Yeah, no, this still isn't it. I played 4 tournaments yesterday. 4 different tournaments for 10 entries. Let's see here. This is a no delay stream, by the way, so if anybody has any questions, just fire away. We see a limp. I decided to just check. I am out of position. Big fan of realizing that you should probably check out of position most of the time. 3-betting this hand doesn't really do much for me, you know, because we're going to go to the flop. And my ace-jack is not the greatest hand. I do think your hands have to be stronger because moves are less available in micros. So I like trapping the ace-jack, which is fine. It's a 60-40. I'll probably check 60% of the time, raise 40% of the time. Player bets one big blind. Again, this is that just auto-click move. It's not really a calculated bet. I call. Check it, check it. River comes off, and I decide to bet half pot here. I like this bet. I think it's one. At the time, I called what he had. I said that I'm betting this here because he can have a lot of kings. That was my reasoning. He can have a lot of, kings that limped off. He can have some pairs like pocket 10s, maybe pocket 7s, that don't want to raise. He can even have pocket 5s that may decide to hero here. You don't really know what's going to call you, but I do always say, like when people say, well, what can call you here? A bad player. That's what can call you here. Doesn't matter what they have. Sometimes they're just a bad player, and their logic doesn't go all the way through the hand. Your logic should say, the player called me on the flop. What does he have to do that? There is no draw here. What am I, 3-4? No. So I must have something, right? Hey, what's up, my man? You were here last night for the whole fucking stream. New follower comes in, watches the whole fucking stream, and sees me take it down. That was great. Yeah, my man here was hanging around for about 8 hours. It was pretty awesome. 8 or 9 hours, something like that. It was pretty epic. So, when he bets the flop and I call, it's like I'm either pure floating or I have something. So what's the most likely thing I'm going to have? Probably an 8, maybe a deuce. I'm not very likely going to have an ace. So this is a perfect scenario where I can now bet because a king will not bet here. A king cannot bet here because it knows when it gets called, it's no good. But a king can call a bet here because I could be bluffing. That's the logic behind this. And, yeah, call me. And you've got to realize, take into account the fact that you're up against somebody who decided to open limp, king-jack offsuit, 8-handed in second position. Not a good player. Not a good player. This is a fold. This is a fold 80% of the time. And if you think the table's weak, it's a raise the rest of the time. But it is never a limp. There's very few hands that are limps. This is not one of them. Like, if he limps and a king hits, or the jack hits, he goes broke right here. That's just the fact of the matter. If this is, deuce, jack, 8, 9, 10, we're going to get it all here. And that's why you don't play these little trouble hands like this. But I thought it was interesting. I did call the hand. I said a king can call me here, so I bet. It was very nice. Little pots like this are really great. I love making value bets, and the thing I beat myself up more about anything is missing value. Because bluffing is very wide open, you know what I'm saying? You can bluff with nothing, without a thought in your fucking head. People talk about how great a poker player Stu Unger was. If you look back at some of the hands and some of the history on Stu Unger, he was just blindly aggressive in a time when people didn't do that. You know what I'm saying? There weren't the crazy Asian guys from California just blasting off because they knew they could put pressure on you. That's what Stu Unger was doing a lot. Now, he was a genius, and he did understand the way the cards worked, but mostly it was blind aggression. To me, bluffing is not the pinnacle of poker. To me, getting every little bit of value out of your hands that could definitely be beat, but you know that they're not, to me, that's the pinnacle of poker. Squeezing your opponents for little bits of value. That they like call you and they go, shit, and they just call it. Had to swap to PC, I'm back. Nice, man. Like, I just love when somebody's just like, God damn it, why did I pay that off? To me, that's the best. Just big shit-eating grin on my face. every time that happens. Let me fix this. Chat box is a little low. There we go. Nice. There we go. That looks better. Yeah, so for me, that's the pinnacle of poker, is value betting thin. Out of the small blind, Jack 10. Is this? I don't think this is the one either. No. Still in other tournaments now. Let's see here. We see a raise and a call. I'm half and half here. I could fold this or call. Nah. I like the call, though. Obviously, the price is right. Flop the jiggity joint, which is pretty nice. Just the best possible hand in the world. Player bets 5 big blinds into 4 players. This is a larger than standard bet into 4 players. So this means one of two things. Aces or nothing. Like, it could be a draw. It could be like the ace, queen of spades. Yeah. You know. But it's just super weak to bet half pot here. So I just call. I decide to let the guy just blast off. Player calling behind is kind of hilarious. Jack on the turn, right? So my hand kind of sucks now because this kills my action. I no longer have the nut. Queen 10 beats me, which would call on the flop. Now I have a 10, so that makes it less likely. But we have to go carefully from here. And this is one where I can't bet and get called and win, but I can check and call and win. So it goes check, check, check. River comes off, deuce of spades. This is, and I said it at the time, this is a good bad card. Because it's not very likely that a spade draw is out there. Because this player would have kept blasting the spades. You know what I'm saying? Because even with the 10 making a one-liner, it's very unlikely somebody has that. And I think this player would have kept blasting if that was their initial impression, because they showed me they were so weak. So really my only worry here is the spade over here. But we've kept the pot small. It's going to be an easy call. And we're going to be able to see what happens. So we just check. Player here does bet just about half pot, which this is what I always refer to as the bad bluff size. If you're going to bluff here, you need to bet really big. Because you're representing spades. So if you had the ace of spades in your hand, like if you had the ace of spades, jack or 9, this would be one you'd want to overbet. You'd want it because nobody has a flush here. This player should never have a flush. I should never have a flush because I've checked so many times. This is a perfect candidate to bet like 40-ish blinds. Believe it or not. Just piling the money. And because it makes it harder and harder for somebody here. I might even jam all in here for this guy's 52 big blind stack. To me, that's easy. Because I know where the ace of spades is if it's in my hand. You can also play it the other way, where you can make it look like a strong value bet, and bet like 18, maybe 17 and a half. That's probably what I do a lot of the time in a multi-way pot, just because there is a chance, I'm beat, and the 10s are going to be hard to get to fold. Somebody could think it's a free roll on the bluff, like I have the ace 10 and the ace of spades in my hand. Somebody could think I'm free rolling the bluff if I overbet jam, so they'll just snap call with their 10. But we're trying to get a 10 to fold here if we go for the bluff. So I think the proper bet here is 17 or 18 for value and just jamming for the overbet, scare the shit out of people. He folds, and I do decide to just generally snap call. And yeah. My man, interesting. He was definitely bluffing. He was not value betting an 8. But his sizing was shit. Like, I really can't raise, and in all honesty, if he had overbet jammed all in, I'm folding. Like, this was a deeper stage of the tournament. It was 700, 1400, so we were past late reg. I would not have called this on the river for 35 blinds or 34, 33 and a half blinds if this guy jammed all in. I was in a good position in this tournament. So this is not the bluff. Now, granted, it's very hard to do with just the queen of spades in your hand, not the ace of spades, but this bet's never going to work. To me, this just looks like somebody has a 10. So it's like, okay, let's chop. But yeah, the bet was pointless. Limps out of first. I have ace queen on the button. Limp over here. I decided to raise. I made this way too small. I kind of did this because I was trying to instigate this player to jam. This one is the whatchamacallit, bounty tournament that I won. I'm super deep now with 2 million chips. You can see all the chips going around. I'm like top 2 or 3 in the tournament at this point with 100 blinds very early. I think we're down to like probably 25 or 30 players at this point. I can probably see what time was the ace queen. That'll give me a little clue here. Let me look at Poker Tracker. The ace queen was at 6 o'clock. I mean, we were deep, man. The blinds are 11,000, 22,000. So I don't know. We're 4 or 5 hours into this. I'm doing very well. The player does just call. This player had a bounty. You know, obviously all these players have bounties, so this is part of the factor of it. So my raise is a bit too small, I think. I probably should have just made it 5 big blinds, but flop comes off. Player leads. I remember this guy. Now I remember why I did this. Because this player limped everything and always did this donk shit for 1 big blind. He's basically always saying, well, if you don't have a king, you can't call. And he's right. But I can raise. So keeping the pot small against him was the idea, to get him to just give up a blind over and over and over and over. And he just did so many times. It's crazy. Yeah. So took that down. Nice little catch. Ace Jack. Let's see here. See a raise, 2.3. We're short-handed now, so we're deeper. I decided to go ahead and call. Hit the jack. It's all right. This player was super aggressive. Loved 3-betting. Going to try for in the money in the free roll to get a tourney with you if you're playing later. I'm probably playing cash games later. After a long day, after 10 hours of playing tournaments, and having all this media to go through and edit, I'm not going to play tournaments again today. Just because it's exhausting. I mean, it's 11 hours. It was over. That one tournament was like 900 hands. So I'm definitely going to play today. But it's going to be cash games. And I have a lot of like laundry to do, and I got to cook and all that kind of shit. So I can't sit down for 11 hours again. So I'll be doing cash games in and out, man. Just keep your notifications on. You'll see me come in and out for 3 or 4 hour streams throughout the day. So as player bets, I don't want to fold yet. I do have the ace of diamonds. I figured this would be good for bluffing opportunities. I mentioned at the time, if another diamond comes off, I can bluff. So I just called. This player was super aggressive, though. Diamond comes off on the turn, kind of perfect for my scenario. I decided to check. I was shocked that he checked back. I really was. And at this point, I was like, ooh, this might not be a good bluffing opportunity, because I thought he might have a king. When he checks back, I feel like he had a stronger hand, because he doesn't want to bloat the pot. He could have something like a set, right? So like he wants the board to pair, but like ace king does not, or bets here. Stronger hands check here, because there's no point to bet, or there's no point in betting a stronger hand, because if you're beat, you're beat. But the ace king can now turn its hand into a bluff, or just keep pressure on, hoping that I don't have like, hoping I fold things like weak 2 pairs, jack 10, things like that. So when he checked, I was like, yikes. But then the world saved my life, and I got a diamond, and I decided just to check, because I obviously have the nuts. And again, he should have something good because of that turn check. So I was very confident he was going to bet. He does bet a little small. I think he should have just went for a value bet. Then way he has a clear fold. I decided to very annoyingly raise his bet to the level it should have been. And he thought about it for a good long time, and then he called. And of course, I made the nuts. And he actually had flopped the nuts and just gotten the worst run out in the world. His check on the turn was the thing. If he had bet the turn, this scenario wouldn't have happened, because I would have checked the river, and there's no fucking way he would have bet it. Because he knows that the only thing I'm calling him with is the ace of diamonds on the turn. So on this turn, if he had just bet 4 blinds, maybe 5, that's as much as he would have lost. But in the end, I ended up hitting the hand and it cost him more. And if I don't hit the hand, I'm not bluffing. You know what I'm saying? Because of his turn check. He let me know he's got a strong hand. If he had bet the turn and I had missed the diamond, I would have bet huge on this river to bluff. It's just the way that the betting shook out. He told me he had a monster. And he was a pussy. 2.5 big blinds with the 9-5. Same player. This is a funny hand more than anything. But this is the same player. This player had been 3-betting me so much. Same player as the previous hand with the ace-queen. This guy he had the potential to be a thorn in my side. But in all honesty, only because he was on my left. I had way more chips than him. I was making much better decisions. But he was annoying with the amount that he was 3-betting. I decided to go ahead and call it just because this hand's got a lot of potential. When I flop good, he's going to go broke. And looky. I flopped a set of 5s. He bet 7 big blinds. This is a pointless bet. Because if you have an overpair, you can't get called by anything that you beat. I've not been hero calling people. Maybe he thinks I would. Who knows? And if I had jacks right here, I would just shove it all in on him. Right? Like, what are we doing? Jack on the turn. He bets small again. I took a long time and just called. He's just betting a third pot. He's already committed to this. But if I raise now, I think he can actually fold, and I want the bounty. So I just call. River, he jams, and we snap call. And my man actually showed up with a good hand, pocket queens. But he gimme all the chips. That was fun because I've been saying for like 2 hours, I'm going to get this guy. And I'm going to get him with something stupid. And I did. It's just kind of the way it goes. 90 deuce. Big blind defense, pretty easy. Getting 3.6 to 1. Sure. Jack 3-3. Check. Player bets pretty standard. Again, this is that rounded bet thing. Third pot bet. This isn't a fully calculated bet. I don't like even number bets. So, in blinds. It shouldn't be exactly 2 blinds. I call. Goes check. This is a pretty easy river bet for me. I'm in the blind. Right? Like, even if this guy has a king, it's kind of a super hard call. Because I just look like I have a 3, right? Like, why would I bet a jack here? Right? I wouldn't bet a jack because this player should have a king. But I can just look like I have a 3, and I just went for that 3/4 pot or 2/3 pot value bet bluff. And, yeah, it just folds. Pretty nice. Jack 8 offsuit. I limp it from the small blind. I've been doing a lot of limping from the small blind in tournaments. I don't usually do that, but I was getting a lot of middling hands and having so many fucking chips. It's like if I had 40 blinds here, I would have raised this or folded it. But having 100 fucking blinds, I kind of don't need to stick my neck out. So limping is fine. I can just fold to a raise or do whatever I want. Comes off. I check player bets. This is a good calculated bet. But there's a lot of potential for bluffs here because I have an 8 in my hand and a jack, overcards, all like that. I call. We're super deep in the tournament at this point, by the way. We're down to the last 2 tables. I call. I pick up the open ender. Pretty cool. It goes check. River's the ace of spades. Kind of an easy bluff to make because this is a limped pot. What's the strongest hand he can realistically have here? A straight, but I don't know if you bet a gut shot on the turn or on the flop. And I could absolutely check call with a 4. 4-3, 5-4, 7-4, even, whatchamacallit, 8-6, 8-4, 4 deuce, ace 4. All these hands can play exactly the way I've played. So, again, value bet bluff, pot goes right down. And these are just fun little things to point out. I'm going to make a video of the value bet bluffing because I think it's a thing people know about, but they don't explain it. See a raise out of first. This is a different tournament, I believe. Right? Oh, no. Oh, this is deeper. Is this at the final table? This might be at the yeah, this is the final table. I got 14 million. We're down to the last what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 players. Yeah, we've had our first elimination. So this is final table now stuff. So I got 30 blinds. We've flattened out quite a bit. And we're just going to call here. I could have 3-bet it, but honestly, the jams behind are a problem. It is a bounty tournament. I wish I could see the bounties here. Comes off with a jack. Player checks. To me, this is an easy one because there's not a lot of jacks that 3-bet, but there's a lot of jacks that call and would want to protect their hands. So I just played this like I was an idiot and hit a jack and got the fold. I like it. So that's the last of the hands I have tagged, but I do want to go through some of the other tournament hands from the win last night. Let's see here. Heads up was a fun scenario. There was a couple little hands I just wanted to look at. I think this is one of them. Let's check it out. Yeah, this is one of the heads up. Oh, this is an interesting, yeah. So we're heads up at this point. I've taken away the chip lead. Started out at a 3-1 deficit, but ended up making some good plays. He was making these huge raises, and I said this was going to be his downfall the entire time in heads up. My raises were bigger because I adjusted, but you should only be min opening here. I went to 2.5 because he was doing this 3.2, and I felt like if I min opened, he was just going to call everything. So I readjusted quickly because I saw this 3.2. This is like playing from the small blind at a full ring on the final table. This is not what you do heads up. This was a super mistake by him that made me win bigger pots than him. Because if he's making it 3.2 and I'm making it 2.5, the pots he raises, I win more than the pots if the pots he loses when he raised, I win more than when I raised and I lose those pots. He wins less. It's 3/4 of a blind, but it adds up, and we don't have a lot of blinds left. There's only 100 left in the tournament, you know. So I do call it with the 6-4. This to me is a pretty easy float, especially when we see this super tiny bet. He had been betting big when he didn't have it and small when he did have it. But this bet was under even that small amount. So I felt like he had maybe a draw. I wasn't really sure. Maybe he had second pair. Really couldn't tell. But it's an easy float because of backdoor potential. This is where the hand kind of becomes interesting. Because that super small bet, one of the thoughts is he could definitely have a good hand here, like an ace. And now he's hit it. So it's very frustrating. And then his bet kind of forces the issue when he makes this. This is a pretty large bet for heads up. Like, his bets are wrong pre-flop, on the flop. He might have been down betting the flop. He could have 2 pair right now. I honestly couldn't tell, but I felt like I had to be able to beat an ace to win this pot. So I was doing the math on it, and I decided, I've only got 9 outs here, realistically. I didn't think it was 2 pair. I didn't think it was a set. But if I felt like this is one where if I hit it, maybe I can end the tournament right now. And if I missed, I'd still have about 45 blinds left. And that was plenty because he'd have 55. And I felt like I could outplay this player down the way. So I did decide to take this call. And there's no way to see this flush when it comes in. There's just absolutely no way. I do decide to check. He does bet big. And it's a monstrous bet. And I was really shocked when he did it. I took a long time. And then I jammed in on him. And he only had 16 blinds left. And to his credit, he folded. But we instigated this the whole way. In the end, I think what he had was a jack or a king here. I think he had a king, and he just couldn't call here. I think if he had had an ace, he would have called me, and the tournament's over. I think this hand was pretty well played because, we just got the majority of the chips here. He just gave it up to us. We were about even in chips when this one started. So I really like the way this hand played out. I was jamming a lot of rivers, though, in all honesty, because his bets seemed very weak. I was going to jam a heart river too because I knew he didn't have the flush. When I jam the river and he folds with the clubs out there, he's absolutely folding with the hearts out there. So that's the other thing too, is I actually had 18 outs or 19 outs because if a heart comes off, I can get him off the hand. So that was a fun one. I kept getting sucked out on. It was hilarious throughout the thing, but in the end, this is how it ended. Got dealt kings. He limped. This is the first time I raised one of his limps. And I think that was a big factor, is that I kept that move behind. Because he didn't limp much. But I hadn't raised any of his limps, so I decided I was going to go linear with it. I decided a long time before this point. And just bet half pot for value. 10 hits a turn. He should have a lot of pairs at this point. I bet. He jams all in. Of course, we call, and there it is. And the tournament goes down. Turns $6 into $915. It's pretty good. And there's going to be more to this review later. This is a fun one. Just because I haven't combed through all the hands yet. He limps. I decide to raise this one. He re-raises. I call. This was interesting. So check this out. So he hadn't been limping very much, right? Or he hadn't been 3-betting pretty much at all. How's the bankroll? Pretty damn good. It's funny. I have been running super shit since I started streaming again in tournaments. And like to the point where I looked at the variance charts in Poker Tracker, and I was running like 5% variance, meaning I was in the 95% of variance negative. So the fact that I had anything left at all is kind of a testament to how well I was doing. But I said it yesterday on stream. I started in September. I took exactly $1,000 and I zeroed out my ACR account for anything other than that. I got it to exactly $1,000 and started the stream because I was like, this will be an easy way to keep track of it, whatever. And I'm using this micro bankroll. And when I started yesterday, I had $150 left, $150.33. And when I ended yesterday, I had $1,000.14. So yesterday's win wiped out, 4 months of just absolute trash. Really 3 months of trash luck. Because I took the last month and a half off of playing tournaments, and then came back first day and won a tournament. That's kind of the way it goes, man. You kind of fix your perspective, and I got a little lucky too. Got to get lucky to win tournaments. But yeah, recovered it all. So the stream is now in profit. QuaiGonBroke is now in profit. If you add up the tournament and the cash games, we are currently in profit. We're like $400 in profit right now, which is pretty good. So I open on the button. He 3-bets, which first 3-bet we saw pre-flop. And I think this led to the kings in the very next hand because of my raising his limp. I call it, and he checks. I bet fairly standard for a pair, and he just folds. And I think this is one that should be illustrated because his 3-bet and then check. This player was so linear at this point, I had him just punchy. It's important to bet here and take this down as soon as possible. And it doesn't seem like much, but it very much so set up the dynamic to end the tournament. A lot of little steals, Heads up took a long time. I'm pretty sure we were heads up for... Well, I guess I can figure it out, huh? Alright. Keep going. Okay, we're heads up there. Come on. I think... Yeah, this is where I knocked out the other player. This was crazy. We're three-handed at this point. And the next pay jump is a 30% pay jump. It's crazy. Player bet small. I raised with just all the equity in the world. He jams. I'm obviously not folding at 20 big blinds. And I was really shocked when he rolled over the straight draw. It was a limp pot. This was just suicide by this guy. And he went out, I believe, the next hand. Let me make sure here. Yeah, and that got us heads up. So we were heads up from right here at 11:24. And it took us 30 minutes of heads up, which is probably, I don't know, 100 hands. It's crazy. Yeah, it took a long time, but whittled them down. Started the heads up at a 3-1 deficit, so very happy with it. You can see how this is a pretty good graph. Yeah, so it was a lot of fun, and yeah. Anybody got any questions for me? I think, you know what? Let's bring up the training site, and I want to just show. Got a couple new people here. I wanted to show something that I do quite a bit. Let's see here. Let me log in. Sorry, don't want to put that on screen. All right. So this is the training site that I use, JonathanLittlesPokerCoaching.com. Right now in the Wake Up With Me's, we're going through the Tournament Masterclass. I've gone through it 1.5 times, but we're going through it again. But let's do something that I really love. He has these quizzes. These are fun. These are super fun. So these are basically just single-hand quizzes. And there's currently, how many of these fucking things? It's like 1,500. 1,525 of these. And you can see the ones that I just go through like every now and then and do whatever. But let's go ahead and get in, and we'll just do a Jonathan Little one to start out. I really like the Jonathan Little ones. I mean, I love Assassinato. I love Faraz Jaka. Lindsay is great. Assassinato. Like all these great coaches that he has working over there. It's amazing. Yesterday I was in Dramatic DJ's channel. He was playing a satellite to the 162 Bounty Builder on Stars. 6 get tickets, might have been 7. 7 left. He was 6 out of 7 with like 2 to 3 big blinds, and he folds king, no raise before him. Comment? Yeah, that's fine. I don't know what the other players had. If that's an even stack, and like if that's a full table, that's a very, very, very common thing you can do. It's a very common thing you can do because it's a satellite. And let's say the guy in the big blind is the chip leader, right? And you're on the stone bubble. The next guy who goes out gets nothing, and then everybody else gets the the seat. He blinded out and missed the ticket. Well, that's a different scenario. Honestly, it can be common if everybody's pretty much even in chips, because if you're in second position and it's 6-handed, blah blah blah, I probably wouldn't do it. But there can be a scenario where you can fold even aces pre-flop. Usually that's when you think the ticket's guaranteed. If he thought the ticket was guaranteed, having 3 big blinds, then yeah, you fold it. Like if everybody's got 1 or 2 big blinds and you have 3, you just sit out. You just sit out until you go through the blinds again. I'm probably not folding the kings. I'm not going to even think... You know about big folds and sats, but that was just wrong in your eyes. You know, I never say anything is wrong because I wasn't sitting in his seat. And Dramatic plays well. He plays really well. Do great players make mistakes? Fuck yeah. But if he believed for some reason that he was going to get that ticket and that he was going to expose himself to risk by playing those kings, then I'd have to say yeah. And he gets pissed when we try to talk about it. Well, I mean, I get that. I do get that. When I play, for me, and this is, I think, kind of unique, the way my brain works, I don't mind talking out what I'm doing. Just because when I vocalize things and turn them into words, it solidifies my thinking. So if I'm sitting there in a hand and I'm like, okay, I want to bet the flop here, and I think I can bet the turn, but I don't want to bet the river, but I do want to bluff catch, it keeps me on track. You know what I'm saying? When I play live, when I've played live, I'm doing that in my head anyway. There's a Twitch stream going on in here long before I even started streaming on Twitch, because it just solidifies what I'm going to do at the poker table, makes my actions more natural. Not more confident, but more natural. So for me, vocalizing is okay. If you're not used to vocalizing, if you're not thinking in words as far as your actions go, it can be super upsetting to have somebody ask you a question that you're not prepared to answer, just because you're not answering questions. He gets pissed when we try to talk about he works his feelings in one way so often. He works his feelings in one way so often. You mean like he had a feeling, that kind of talk? Yeah. He is always right, blah, blah, blah. I mean, here's the problem. It took me... I don't think it happened till... I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think it happened till after I came out out of the closet as pansexual a couple years ago. That was a big event in my life, and it kind of allowed me access to emotions that I didn't have before. My go-to emotion used to be anger. I don't really get too angry much anymore, no matter what happens. I get frustrated sometimes just out in life, but I'm very easily able to let it go. So now having access to these emotions, I'm kind of watching how they work and trying to figure them out. I can't imagine coming up as a poker player and having all those emotions going on all the time, because I would have quit. I couldn't handle it. But you have to maintain ridiculous confidence being a poker player. And I think when you say, I had a feeling, or whatever like that, I think sometimes that can be a catch-all for, I'm just going to do this because I'm the best. Like that's a feeling that goes on in poker players' heads. They go, oh, I'm the best. I'm the best player in the world. Because think about it, especially playing tournaments. Yesterday's tournament that I won, it's a ridiculous thing, right? Like I obviously had to get lucky to win it, right? Like not to say that I'm not a skilled player, but there was 967 players in that fucking thing. That's insanity to enter that and think I'm going to win. You know what I'm saying? But I'm going to tell you the truth. I don't play tournaments unless I believe in my heart I'm going to win the tournament. Not I can win, I'm going to win. So I take losses very hard. But I think for most poker players, it's hard to analyze yourself because of the fact that you need to keep the supreme confidence. So until after I came out, I couldn't say, I fucked up. I made a mistake. No, I fucked that one up, man. I couldn't say it at the time. I could go back and look and go, oh, that's a mistake because statistically, blah, 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 the solver, yada, yada, yada. It gave me an out to not be correct because no one could know this stuff off the top of their head. The truth of the matter is, I know when I fucked up. You know what I'm saying? And I go back and review the hands, and you'll see me just sit there and go, you know what I'm saying? But that's a recent strength that I've gotten. I'm also 44 years old. I'm doing a lot of emotional development. So I don't, shit on anybody's journey. I think if a player is aggro and it works for them, great. But I think being in touch with your emotions definitely works better in the long term, just because you're going to be too stressed out. But Dramatic's a great player. You know what I'm saying? He plays very well. He gets very consistent results. He's been doing it for years. Great streamer. People love to watch him. And if he doesn't want to talk about it, he doesn't have to talk about it. What I would suggest is ask him if he would ever do a like a no delay, chat with me stream when he's not playing, like something like this. You know what I mean? Like go through some hands. Like let's talk about it. Let's do it. He might not be interested in it, but I think in that format, it's a safe space where you can go, "Oh yeah, that was a mistake," or "I see your point." You know what I'm saying? Like, but a lot of poker players will not debate shit. They'll talk about shit with their friends, but they won't debate. Not so many people like to watch him. He's been struggling with viewers for years. I don't know that that's true. Got to be honest. Like he gets more viewers than I do. I'll tell you that right now. I mean, I know I haven't been back to it for very long, but yeah, I don't watch poker streams pretty much at all, which I guess maybe that's a flaw. But yeah, I just don't like because I get too emotionally involved watching poker streams because you know what it's like to be in the chair, and I can't take the hurt on my heart if I'm not in there competing. Uh, you're in there more often. He's below 50 a lot. 50's great, man. I won a tournament last night, and on the final table, at the height of my viewership, I had fucking 15 people. So, I mean, honestly, uh, but yeah, I mean, maybe who knows? Plus Twitch has been around a lot longer now, and I know that there's people that were super fans of me, before I took the break, and then I took the break, and he has 18 now. Well, dude, I have 3. I have 3 right now. I mean, I know I'm not playing poker, but I get what you're saying. But I like DD. 80 is not great when you've been streaming for years. I mean, is it? I mean, it depends on what your goals are. I'm trying to keep it in perspective that he scares people away. I get what you're saying, man. So, I mean, do you still watch him? I like taking the conversation this way. Do you still watch him? I mean, I'm going to be perfectly honest. I don't know the guy. I know him from Twitch from years ago, and we've hosted each other a few times, but I don't really know him. I honestly can't say I've watched his stream much. You're fucking pissed since yesterday? Got timed out? Well, you can't just, well, what happened, dude? Let's talk about it. I have had people come in, and people who are subscribers of mine, and they've said certain things in game, and I've sat there and gone, well, I can't really explain my thinking right now, but I'll tag the hand and we'll go over it in a review. And then they just keep going, and I'm like, dude, we're not going to talk about it right now because I'm playing fucking 5 tournaments or 12 cash game tables, so I can't really review it, blah, blah, blah. You mentioned the King is an all-in. So he folds the King, and you go, that was an all-in, and he just banned you? Be honest. Is that really what happened? Or did you say, oh my god, why did you fold the King? And he tried to explain, and then you argued with him. Because it's very hard, and satellites might be more pressure than any other situation because it's more zero sum than other poker tournaments. Because you get zero a lot in satellites, man. I mean, I'll just say this, man. If the dude's toxic, he's toxic. I don't know the guy. I don't watch his stream. I would really hate to like shit talk somebody that I don't have any real frame of reference for. You know what I'm saying? I think that's kind of a pussy move. But you're a supporter and a subscriber, and that's great and all. But it sounds like you're not enjoying your time there. And if you're not enjoying your time there, man, just because you have history with somebody, this is something that I talked about with my wife years ago. She had a lot of people in her life. Now, I'm not the one to go to for friends because I don't have that skill. I don't really know how to, make and hold friendships. It's just kind of part of my, issues. But she had a lot of friends that she knew since she was a kid. And to me, I looked at it like romantic relationships. It's like, you can grow apart from people, like whatever. But there were a couple people in her life that I was like, she would tell me things about, and I'd be like, why are you putting up with this? Like, fuck them. And the response was, well, I've known them for 15 years. And I'd be like, okay. And now you know a dick for a long time. Like, I didn't get it. Like, I don't get that emotional attachment. And that's a flaw of mine. But I think it illuminated something for her, that history does not guarantee future. You know what I'm saying? Just because you like the guy in the past, if you don't like him anymore, maybe it's time to move on. Maybe you've grown. Maybe he's changed. Who knows? I think every relationship can be compared to a romantic one. It's just because the romantic ones are the most intense ones. But friend relationships, business relationships, you know what I'm saying? You can sit there and go, well, this was great. And I'll always have fond memories, of these streams back in the day. And maybe I can watch VODs or YouTube if the guy's got it. But you know what? Not for me anymore. It's okay. I had a very similar reaction. I used to be a very huge Howard Stern fan when I was, from middle school on. And I mean, I would record, I would go to school and I couldn't listen. And I actually got for my birthday one year, because I really wanted this feature, a timer with a new cassette radio. So I could record his entire show every day. So it would turn on when his show started. I had a set timer. When I woke up for school, I would just change the tape, and then I had at least 2 3-hour tapes of Howard Stern. I would get the whole show, right? And then I would listen to them. I would take the first tape with me to school, listen to that when I could, blah, blah, blah. I would get home. I'd listen to the rest. I'd go to the pool hall. I'd have the headphones in. I loved Howard Stern. Right about my junior year in high school, I've been listening to him for it was probably my senior year. I've been listening to him for a really long time, and I just realized this wasn't for me anymore. You know what I'm saying? I really loved all the stuff he'd done. I read all of his books, but I was like, you know what? This is just kind of not what I'm into. And maybe he's doing the same thing, but he's a person who got older. I'm a person who got older. I'm a person who matured. I'm a person who went a different way. And I had to put it down. And I haven't listened to Howard Stern in a long time. And I actually feel like a bit of a loss, because I remembered how much I loved it. But sometimes, it's not for you anymore. I think people have that relationship with The Simpsons too, the TV show. It's been on for so long, but it's like, I feel like The Simpsons has sucked for about 20 years now. So, maybe that's me. Let's jump into one of these. Let's do a Jonathan Little one. Let's see here. Can I... Desktop audio. Here we go. All right. So you guys should hear this. I'm going to have to adjust the sound. Just give me a second here.
Here we have the beautiful Ace Queen.
I am sorry about that. All right. So this is a hand that he played somewhere. Ace Queen offsuit. Looks like he's pretty deep. Yeah, this has got to be a final table, right? Let's see what old JL says here.
Queen offsuit on the button, facing a raise from the hijack seat. Should we fold, call, re-raise to 620,000, or re-raise to 920,000?
For me, the dynamic here is pretty good. We're the chip leader, it looks like, six-handed. So I think we need to exhibit pressure. Having the button is great. I think 620 is enough to raise. If this was suited, I'd be much more inclined to call. But an offsuit ace queen, I like the 3-bet, and I really like 620,000. I don't think you need to go for this much, because we're just trying to get heads up, right? Heads up in position. Like, we're not really gonna just take this pot down, most likely pre-flop with a big raise. So, yeah, here we go.
If we are going to re-raise in this scenario, we definitely want to re-raise to a rather small size, like 620,000, about 2.5.
So they score you on out of 1 out of 10 or 1 to 10, right? So we got 9. So we might not have had the best answer. So, but you gotta stick with these because he'll explain. And you gotta remember, Jonathan Little, if nothing else, is a robot. He's a GTO robot, Doug Polk level. Like might be more GTO than Doug Polk because the shit the guy knows off the top of his head. If you've ever watched his like a little coffee streams where he just chit chats with people like I'm doing now, holy shit! Like the man's a robot. So I take his opinions as rule and try to. Doesn't mean I'm always going to do what he does, but it means I have to see why he said what he said. So here we go.
5 times the initial raise. The problem with going bigger than that, like 920,000, is that if we do get called or re-raised, then we're actually in pretty bad shape. And we don't want to be in bad shape. We want to be in good shape. So this is a spot where I much prefer to either re-raise kind of small or call. I like calling a lot on the button in general in spots like this because if we do re-raise and get shoved on, it's a pretty bad spot and we're probably supposed to fold. But I don't really want to fold ace-queen. It's a pretty good hand.
Yeah, my general rule for calling on the button, just because I've heard it so many times, is calling better with the suited ace-queen than the offsuit one, but it is close. I did it last night with an ace-king on the button, same way, when we were down to like 2 tables. So, yeah, I dig that.
So,
but it's
typically
close.
I like calling, especially in the middle and late stages of a tournament, just because I really don't want to find myself playing big pots with good but non-nut hands. So I do call. We get the middle pair facing a third.
See, now here's an interesting level. So people don't expect the call, right? They think 6-handed, you're supposed to just 3-bet, blasty, blasty, blast. But here's the thing. If we had 3-bet, and the player had called, and then this flop came down, we can absolutely be beat here, right? But when we just call, the range is wide open. We can have anything. We can have a set of fucking 3s. He doesn't know. We could have fucking king queen. We could have 10 jack of clubs. This player doesn't know, so it gives us a lot more maneuverability, right? I don't know if I definitely don't like going all in here. I definitely think there's a good case for raising here, a really good case for raising. And I know what I'm gonna call here 95% of the time unless I have a player specific read. But I always want to consider the other option that I consider reasonable. Jamming's not a reasonable option because when we get called, we're just fucking cornholed and that's the end of it, right? Raising to 600,000, I like considering this option because we take away the villain's ability to bet us and bet us off of a very strong hand. It can buy us a showdown or at least get us a check on the turn, right? So like, I might be more inclined to do that with even a weaker hand. You know what I'm saying? Hey, Pro Conjured, if that was a link, man, I don't know how to undo it, but you can't post links in my chat. I've tried to undo it. I've tried to make it available for subs. I don't know what's going on. I do appreciate you being there. If it's something important, just whisper it to me. I can see links there. But if you're a bot, you can eat shit. So I like to consider the raise here. I think if I had a hand, honestly, like a good draw, I might like the little raise here because we buy the river. Queen 10, I'd probably do it too. But yeah, I think calling is fine. I'm going to go with call here because I don't know what the dynamic is. So let's call.
Middle pair is a very, very clear marginal made hand. If you are not up to speed on these topics, definitely check out the Tournament Masterclass. Also check out the homework. There we go through and classify our hands into premium made hands, draws, marginal made hands.
Okay, so I got a whisper, not from Pro Conjured, but from somebody else. You can look at my commands, ! Nails will tell you why I'm wearing the nails. The whisper person who has not chatted in stream, just to be clear, I'm not insulting anybody. Watch it. Careful. That's all.
Hands or junk. And middle pair, top kicker is pretty much always a marginal made hand. And you should know, with your marginal made hands, you pretty much always want to call. There really is no other option here. If you raise and get action, it's not great. you're not folding, clearly. And if you go all in and get called, it's terrible, right? Because we're going to be behind basically every time. So calling is the only viable option here. And you may say, your opponent bet's so small, do you really want to let him see the turn for cheap? The answer is, yeah, it's the best of our options. Plus, in position, we want to be calling pretty wide and calling our decently strong middle pairs.
Plus, this is also how you goat bluffs, right? Like, if somebody makes a super small bet like this is almost like a quarter pot. I mean, it's about a third pot, which is kind of standard, these days. But on a final table situation like this, you would probably bet bigger with a more defined hand. You can goat a lot of good bluffs here just by calling, too. That's the other thing that I don't think people...
strengthens and protects our calling range to some extent. I know this isn't an overly premium hand or anything, but it certainly isn't junk, right? So we do call. Turn is Jack of Diamonds. And the opponent checks. Should we check, bet 400,000, bet 800,000, or bet 1.2 million?
See, these are always tough for me because I feel like now we can get called by a lot of hands that we beat, and we want to get some value. The river's going to go check a lot unless our opponent improves. Let's say our opponent has, our opponent could have any. He could have, Queen 10. He could have, pocket 10s. He could have pocket 9s. He can even have a hand as bad as like an ace 5 suited. So I don't like just check here. I think I'm more apt to check with just top pair because, we're less likely to get drawn out on. Like, granted, this is kind of the same thing. I guess checking is okay. He's probably going to say checking is okay. Personally, at the stakes I play, this is kind of a signal to take the pot away. But on a final table, let's check. I think I'm checking on a final table. I'm going to check.
This is a neat spot because when the opponent checks, our hand is somewhere between a premium hand and a marginal hand, but I do think it is possible for the opponent to have a hand like ace-king that's checking, or aces even, or king-10, or maybe even queen-jack. I think all these hands are going to feel at least somewhat inclined to check.
The queen-jack is the one that popped in my head where I was like, ugh, like that doesn't seem great for me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, ugh, that's kind of, I'm never going to get a fold.
Check the turn because obviously I could have a whole lot of two pairs and whatnot here. I think this ace-queen is best played just by letting it go check. If we are going to bet, we want to bet on the smaller side because we are trying to get called by a hand worse than ace-queen. So what is worse than ace-queen, right?
I mean, there's queen 9s, there's queen 10s. Those still have a ton of equity against us. There's jack 10s, things like that. All those kind of hands can call us. Pocket 10s, stuff like that. But he's right. I think there's more combos. I think it's even, more likely. The player that raised out of first, they're either just completely screwed, like with like a pair of 8s, or they're on the same level with us where they're not exactly 100% sure if their hand is good or not. So, yeah, checking is good.
It's going to be queen 10, which the opponent may not even raise unless it's suited in. We block that. Or jack 10, jack 9, pocket 10s, ace 10.
The real factor here for me is that I don't see any clubs except for these two on the board. So I don't have any in my hand. Like, the villain could definitely have a flush draw, in which case, how much would we have to bet to guarantee he doesn't draw? We'd have to bet, kind of more than I'm comfortable with. It'd be about 700,000 or 800,000. On the turn, and if he has a hand that's just like a suited ace of clubs, we're never getting a fold. So yeah, the check is obviously
we lose
the
to,
thing.
right? Ace high is not going to call. So really, if you think about it, there's not a ton of hands that can reasonably call here. And given we're trying to get called by a pretty weak range, if we are going to bet, we want to bet on the smaller side, like 400,000. That said, I definitely think checking is by far the safest play in the later stages of a tournament. Because if you bet and get raised, it's just miserably bad, although it probably is just a fold, even though your opponent could have a lot of various flush draws with gut shots and whatnot. But just let it go check. Your life's going to be way easier. Sometimes give up a little bit of value, but late in tournaments, often giving up a little bit of value in exchange for not being put in difficult spots with lots of money at risk is worth it. All right, river comes to 7, and the opponent checks. Should we check, bet 400,000, bet 800,000, or bet 1.2 million?
My feeling is I should pretty much have the best hand here a ton. What can call me? I remember when we were battling on Stars years back. Those were the days. Yeah, back in when I lived in Canada for the 6 months. That was a lot of fun. I think this is one. It's an interesting thing you bring that up too, because this dynamic is completely different now in poker than it used to be. Used to be in poker, this would just be a slam big bet, or a check. Like there was no middle ground. But I think honestly, I think we can get called here sometimes by like a worse queen, and I don't think we get raised as a bluff very much. I'm kind of inclined to just go for a straight value here. But you know, there's a missed flush draw. Jack 10 is very possible. We didn't re-raise pre-flop. Maybe we just go for a little thin value here. So yeah, maybe we bet 400,000, and if we get raised, we can reevaluate. But I don't think I want to just go check. I'm gonna bet 400K.
So
Ooh,
this is similar to the
look at me pulling it out. Look at this. Because I'm gonna get called by Jack 10 a ton here, and Ace Jack, and you know all those Queen 10. Look at me pulling out the best move. The very thin value bet. I like that a lot.
Except for now, the opponent has checked twice, which makes our hand pretty good. So this is definitely a spot where I think we probably want to go for either a small river value bet or just check. You're going to find in scenarios like this, if we are going to bet, something like a third pot or 40% pot is usually pretty nice with our thin.
Because the concept is we're trying to get somebody who has a bluff catcher to catch our bluff, right? When we're not bluffing. So a bluff catcher here is Queen 10, it is Jack 10, it is pocket nines, it is, you know, there's a lot of hands here, man. Like, yeah, a king is a bluff catcher too, but I don't know if anybody's checking a king twice. He's going to bet the river, even just to control the size of the pot. They're going to make the bet that we're making now. So just to get to showdown, a little blocker action. So I think there's a lot of hands that can get to this point that can call us. You'd be surprised. Sometimes you'll even see a guy with like pocket fives call here just because they think you're just always on the club draw. And if I had the ace of clubs in my hand, I'd even be more inclined to make this bet, maybe make it a little bit bigger. I'm sorry, by not having it in my hand, it makes it easier to make this bet or even make it a little bit bigger because he can have the ace of clubs, which means he knows that we don't have the premium draw. Or what I'm saying is if I had the, God damn it, I said it backwards twice. If I had the ace of clubs, he doesn't see the ace of clubs. He doesn't know where it is. He can then give me credit for just the suited ace of clubs and thinking I'm taking a small bluff shot now. So the small bet is obviously the play.
Value hands, and kind of like on the turn, this is somewhere on the cusp between a value bet and just let it go check. Clearly letting it go check is the easy play, but it probably does leave a little bit of value on the table. The question is how much value is it actually leaving on the table? Will the opponent call with worse hands? Well, if they have ace jack or Queen 10 or Jack 10, they could certainly call a small bet. But even then, they may just fold, because this is a board that should be very, very good for my range. Also, betting does open up the door for us to get raised every once in a while, which is terrible. Like really, 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 really bad. So I'm actually not sure what the best play is in this scenario. Late in tournaments, like I said, I often do give up a little bit of value in exchange for just ensuring I don't end up playing a big pot in a marginal scenario, and I think betting opens the door for that. That said, against weak, tight, straightforward recreational players, maybe not weak and tight, but against straightforward players who are always going to be betting with their kings on the river, meaning when they check, they just always have a queen or worse, then value betting is by far the best play, right?
Am I promoting this stuff? What do you mean? I'm not sponsored. I don't have an affiliate link. I actually, before I started streaming, I said that I wanted to use their material on streams like this because this is what I do. This is what I do a lot of mornings is I'll wake up, you know, take care of the dogs, play a little Hearthstone, and then go on, you know, a site and study a little bit, maybe do some of these quizzes, go over my hand reviews from the previous day. So I wanted to do a Wake Up With Me where there was no delay. No, I don't have a sponsorship. No, I actually pay money to them every year. And I sent him an email saying, hey, man, I want to use your stuff. One, is that okay? And two, if you guys have an affiliate program, I'm going to be telling people how much I love this site. So whatever. And they were very nice. And they wrote back and they said, that's perfectly fine if you want to use our material. You own it. You know, you pay your yearly membership. That's cool. But we don't currently have an affiliate program going. Sometimes we do in the future. But usually what they do is instead of having affiliate programs is they just hire new coaches. Like Brad Owen. Brad Owen's done some quizzes on here. And so has Andrew Nemi and you know, all these people. And they just have them do some quizzes and they promote it that way. You know, and they just pay their coaches. They just hire them on. So, no, I'm not getting no benefit to me other than I'm sharing with you how much I like the site. The bulk of my poker learning before this was experience and books. I read just literally hundreds, it's not an exaggeration, of poker books. But having a training site that I felt was worth the money, to me, I'll scream to the heavens about it because, you know, I got a special deal on it and locked it in. But yeah, I get to hear more often. I need to hear stuff like this. Nice, man. Well, I try to do these streams 4 to 5 days a week between like 11 and, you know, I start like between 11 and noon Pacific Standard Time. That's Vegas time. I try to do that just so I can have some interaction one-on-one, no delay with you guys, because it's rough when you're, you know, streaming poker. You have to have a fucking delay because somebody could just be a fan and just see my cards, you know. So... yeah, I like this kind of stuff, these study streams in the morning, and why not stream it, man, and get to chit-chat with y'all. So it's a lot of fun. So I like the way this hand's going, though.
However, in this tournament, this was a $200 buy-in tournament. I didn't think the opponents were terrible by any means. So for that reason, I think letting it go check is fine, but I also like the idea of value betting. It's just always so rough when you do get check raised, and when you're playing online in medium or high stakes tournaments, you will get check raised some like real percentage of the time. Whereas if you're playing live poker, I definitely think it is viable to go for a value bet here the vast majority of the time. So look, whenever I'm going to score this quiz, I'm going to give a small bet the best option, but know that I think check is definitely fine. And as you're playing against tougher and tougher opponents, you should be more inclined to check. But I realize the vast majority of people are playing against relatively straightforward players, which is why I think a small bet against those players is probably going to be ideal. This time I let it go check though, and would beat a7. Notice this is a hand that, even though he rivered a 7, probably would have just folded to a bet, even if I bet on the river. And for all I know, he may even check raise. Like, this is actually an okay hand to check raise on the river, which is kind of scary, right? I mean, it's tough to know because who knows if the opponent would have check raised the river. But imagine I bet 400,000 on the river and he shoves all in. That's awful for me, right? And I'm going to fold. And I definitely do not want to fold. So who knows how this hand would have played out if I bet? Who knows how the hand would have played out if I missed? Or if my opponent missed on the river. Notice if he missed on the river, he may go for the bluff, and I would have called, and that would have been great, right?
That's the other thing, too, is when you see the check on the river, you always have to think about the fact that people are more inclined to bluff with a worse hand. So checking on the river means he should have some showdown value. At the stakes I play, that means I'm going to bet small here because I'm going to get bluff caught by somebody checking who's just... because they haven't given up. They just have some form of value. And notice he doesn't have the ace of clubs in his hand, so I could absolutely be on the busted flush draw. And he would just have to figure out if I had it. Now, if it's me, if I'm in his seat, and I had played this hand the same way, I'm probably leading the river because I don't want my 7 to get beat by a jack. You know what I'm saying? I'm probably turning this hand into a bluff. At the stakes I play, it works very well. I don't know if it would at these higher stakes as $200 buy-in. That's right. Just me.
But I think late in tournaments, very often against people who are strong and confident and willing to battle, the name of the game is just not getting blown off your equity. And right here, an easy way to get blown off your equity is to bet the turn over the river. And in exchange for giving up a little bit of
turn bet, I hate
value in these spots, we never get blown off our equity. So I like the way I played it, but I do think in general betting small on the river is probably a little bit better than checking.
Okay, I like it. Let's just see randomly who the next quiz is. And you can just bang through these. I've done that for like 8-10 hours a day. I've done that where I just like throughout the day just gone to these things and it's fun too because it's like you're playing a hand. Like you get a real sense of accomplishment when you get the answer right to the consensus. You know, nothing's ever right in poker, but there's a consensus of what's best.
This hand, you're playing a $55 buy-in, $50,000 guaranteed tournament on an American-facing site during the weekday. You have Ace-Jack offsuit. You are under the gun +1. What would you like to do here? Would you like to fold, call, raise to 1,300, or raise to 1,950?
Small bets are fairly standard. We're doing pretty well. 65 is 10, so we have like 50. I'm probably still going bigger here, so I'm gonna go 19.5. Now that's a full 3x though. All right, let's not be stupid. I would know what these are in blinds at the time, so let's just get out the calculator here. So, big blind is 650. We have 353 divided by 650. So we have 57 blinds. My answer is not here. I like 2.5. So my bet is like 16.5. But I guess we have enough. Well, wait a minute. So there's a lot of players who only have 20 blinds here or less. Yeah, let's min raise.
If you said raise to 1950 because you think it's a good idea to get a slightly more passive big blind to call you there, I certainly can't disagree with that. You don't really have anyone that's really going to call you out on it, although you do have some active 3-betting percentages behind you. So, just so you know, the statistics we're looking at here, and I'm going to start including statistics in these hand history reviews because we're going to be playing online for a while. It seems like the first number is VPIP. That just means what percentage of the hands does the person play voluntarily. The second number is pre-flop raise. What percentage of the hands does the person raise pre-flop? And the last number is going to be 3-bet percentage. Those are just the ones we're going to start with. Please do not try to play the way my HUD says I play. I was playing a lot of low-stakes tournaments and 6-max tournaments, trying to do lots of different plays, lots of bluffs, because was trying to... My students kept telling me this stuff like, oh, you know, these 50-cent tournaments and these $3 tournaments and $1 tournaments and $6 tournaments, nobody ever folds. And I really wanted to prove that's not true. I thought that was an excuse. But because deep in tournaments, people do tend to fold.
It is an excuse. Granted, the money isn't much, but people separate that based on how long they've been in a tournament. It's much easier to get folds on a bubble and a final table bubble, you know, than it is the first level. So it's the emotional investment if the money investment isn't there. So he's absolutely right. And as somebody who lives at the micros, I will say that I definitely agree. And people who say, oh, they never fold at my stakes. No. You just need to do a little bit more studying.
Because they get
but I love that he took it as a challenge. I love that he took it as an absolute challenge and said, yeah, I'm one of the best poker players in the world. I play for, you know, $100,000 buy-in tournaments, but let's play some 50-cent dollar and see if you fuckers are right. And he's just proving him wrong.
If they've played like through 20,000 people and now they're playing for some real money, even if the initial buy-in was only $5, 4 hours of your time is still significant sunk cost, right? So, yeah, I was trying to do some more exotic bluffs with the last few tournaments I was playing. Was lucky enough to win like $1.65 with a bazillion runners, which was pretty fun. Just show my students how it was done. But yeah, normally I would play like way closer to like 17, 15 or something, especially like higher stakes. Like you do not want to be getting that out of line. That's those statistics are definitely a lot of people letting me get away with the 3-bet imposition in lower stakes and letting.
Yeah, this 12% 3-bet is fucking ginormous. Like, I was pretty dominant in mine in the tournament I won yesterday, and I think mine was at like 6 or 5.5. I'll have to go back and look, but yeah, that's just monstrously hot 3-betting percentage.
Get away with wider opens in late position because they're not 3-betting me. You don't want to be playing like that. But yeah, everybody else, this is their accurate statistics, and you're going to need to know how to deal with them. And typically, you know, before you open, you should always look at rejam stacks behind you. There's none of them here. It's at the beginning of the tournament. And you should look at everybody's 3-bet percentages. We do have a couple of more active players. So Brock
is his
Lesnar
voice low?
does 3-bet a decent amount, and Dirty Dan, somewhat decent, although a small sample. So anyway, we do go ahead and open here to 1,300, and that's fine. I've just been using the 2x open pretty much consistently. If you wanted to go for more than that. And Dirty Dan does go ahead and make it 1950 here. Here, would you like to fold, call, raise to 2,600, or raise to 5,850?
Okay, so this player we only have 12 hands on. Okay, so we can't really do whatever on that. But there's a little information here. This player's 3-betting half the hands. You're going to run into a lot of players, especially at micros, who have adopted these certain scenarios of, in the small blind, they're 3-betting or folding. His 3-bet is so fucking small that he's just adhering to that rule. So what does that mean? Well, it means that you have position. Your standard play here would be to call, but versus somebody who has a 3-bet or fold mentality in the small blind, they're going to be out of position. Personally, I think we should re-raise, and I think we should re-raise fairly large. Going to 2,600 is a min re-raise. I don't like that. This is kind of the proper re-raise. It's a little high. I might be overthinking this scenario. This happens a lot. You got to remember, Assassinato here is one of the best online players that has ever lived. So sometimes I game the game and try to figure out what he's going to say. And in an ideal scenario, I'm probably going to 4-bet this with this player, with this information, probably 50% of the time, and I'm going to go about 4,500 or so. This bet is super big, and I think that's by design. So I'm going to go with it because I think that's what he's going to go with it. Personally, most of the time, early stages of the tournament, just going to call, play post-flop, take it away from a player who's blindly re-raising stupidly. So,
all right, so what we're going to do here, when this person 3-bets us here, is we're going to go ahead and click it right back to them.
See, this is the thing I'm talking about. Like, he it's very hard to discern because he's such a genius. It's very hard to discern because we got clicked back. If we click back again, it makes a big statement. But then again, players with, shitty hands here will just ram-a-lam on you. So I gotta hear what he says.
At 2,600. Now, Dirty Dan takes about 1 second and then calls. So the board comes ace-5-2, and Dirty Dan checks to us here. Do we want to check? Do we want to bet 2,253? Do we want to bet 3,205? Or do we want to bet 4,808?
Mehmet Darkin, I'm not here to flame. I guess click back is more okay since we're in position. Yeah, very true. I think it's just I think the thinking here is just to take away the betting lead from a player who's got a 3-bet or fold mentality. I think that's true. Not here to flame. That's an interesting thing to say. I don't know what that means. Let me see here. I think I know who you are. Let me look. I'm going to have some fun. Let's see. Mehmet Darkin. I don't know you. Oh, I thought you were another streamer that I knew. But you don't stream. Interesting. I mean, flame away. Go ahead. It's fine. Yeah, the clickback's better in position. So now we've hit one of our better flops. I do think this is one where we can actually trap. Yeah, you're a trapper, right? I kind of like checking here. I kind of like checking here a lot because when we check, a lot of times from this player's perspective, it's that we don't like the ace. And we want him to blast off. So I think I like the check. It's either a check or a small bet from me. So I'm going to go from the check.
So we're going to go ahead and bet 2,253.
All right. Very reasonable.
We'll discuss why we do all of these moves at the end of the hand. Dirty Dan takes about 2 seconds and calls. The turn is the 9 of hearts, and Dirty Dan checks to us here. Do we want to check? Do we want to bet 2,729? Do we want to bet 4,354? Or do we want to bet 5,516?
So at this point in the hand, I think Assassinato is going with bet, bet, bet. Where is that? Nah. I don't know what that is. NEA? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe that's a... What is it? We have the ace of hearts. We don't need to bet huge. True, but what are we trying to accomplish? And you got to remember, we got called on that flop by that small bet. So ace-jack's kind of the minimum for value, I think. We don't need to bet huge. We have the ace of hearts. Like I said, I'm not trying to play like Assassinato. He's just got 10 times as much experience as me. I'm trying to learn from him. So it's very hard for me not to just guess what he's going to do. And obviously I'm not getting it 100% right. I mean, the check was obviously okay to trap. But I think he's trying to goat something. He's either trying to goat a bluff, because we got snap called, or he's trying to go bet, bet, bet to make a better ace fold. In this scenario, it's such a small buy-in tournament that I do think we want to keep getting value. Pot's 10,000. I got to say, if we're going to get called, we're going to get called. And when we have the best hand, I think we want to just bet bigger. So I'm going to go with the bigger bet.
We go ahead and bet 4,354 here. Dirty Dan takes about 2 seconds and then calls. The river is the 4 of clubs, and he checks to us here. Would you like to check? Would you like to bet 5,231? Would you like to bet 8,754? Or would you like to bet 12,241?
Well, this is a... His quizzes are so fucking hard. This is such a brain pretzel because, like, this is one of those ones where I feel like in game, if I played it this way, even with the utmost confidence in what I was doing, by the time I got to the river, I'd be like, what the fuck is going on? How can this player play that stupid? But I learned a big thing from Assassinato, saying that when you're good, you're going to get paid by shitty players anyway. The only thing here is I'm trying to figure out what we beat. If somebody had ace-3, they would have called us down. Ace-4, ace-5, ace-deuce, obviously. All the wheel combos. But for some reason, I feel like this player doesn't have an ace. And I think we would have gotten raised on the turn if we were up against a set. Does this guy just have, like, kings? This is tough. I don't know. I definitely think we go for value. It's so tough. I'm gonna go with the smallest bet. I just don't know.
So we go ahead and bet 5,231 here. And I want to back through this entire...
I like when he does this too. He goes through all the actions and then he explains it. That's kind of fun because you don't get tips along the way as to what he's trying to do. So I guess what we're trying to do is get called here by a pair of kings or queens.
And just explain our logic for everything. So first off, when we're looking at this click back, whenever people get cute with me deep stacks, this tends to be a low stakes move. Like what you're about to see is not something you should ever do at like even mid stakes. I've been playing tons of low stakes tournaments right now just to get material for my students because 99% of my students play low stakes tournaments on the internet or like local tournaments, and that more or less play like a $33 buy-in on the internet. So I felt I wouldn't be doing my job if I wasn't doing tons of research on what could make them the most money in these tournaments, right? So have been really trying to work through them and not even playing like good mid-stakes nearly as much. Like the move I'm about to show you shouldn't do with mid-stakes players, you should not do with high-stakes players because they would see through it pretty quick. But with low-stakes players, you can get really out of line, and most of them will not do anything about it. Like to a staggering degree, you can get out of line. And this is one case of it, which is this person 3-bets you really small, and you have to ask yourself, what real hand would they have done that with? It's like if they had aces, kings, queens, jacks, ace, king, wouldn't they have wanted the pot to be a little bit bigger? So something I do this a lot live when someone tries to get cute with me with like a really small 3-bet, is I'll just 4-bet it back like really quick. And you got to look like you've been doing this play. Like, if you're going to do this live, just make it look like the easiest thing you've ever done in your life. Just 4-bet very small. And then
It's so funny I've done that. That's so funny. I was thinking about a tournament at South Point I played right before the lockdowns or the mask mandates came back and it became too dangerous. I did this in a live tournament that I ended up chopping. And I did it because this player had done this move to a few other people and it kind of fucked him up. So I decided that his move didn't count. So I just took back the betting lead by min re-raising. And when he just called, it was like he never raised. It was like he just called my raise. Like I was able to look at the hand from that perspective, and it worked out really well. I think I just figured out what he's doing here.
then what ends up happening is a lot of times you get a timing tell, because if the person was like getting cute with like aces, kings, or queens, they tend to sit there for a second and they go, okay, do I want to slow play this now or do I want to raise it back? And they need a little bit of time if they were really getting cute with aces or kings, which does happen on occasion, but not that often.
There's also another factor online. It could have just been a misclick, right? Player could have just misclicked the min raise. Like he might have meant to hit call and his call and raise button are too close together. Maybe he's playing a lot of tables and his tournaments or tables are too small. I've done that. I've done that this week. So, yeah, that could just be a misclick. So clicking it back and getting the call kind of negates his 3-bet. You can kind of just say, oh, he just called my raise pre-flop.
But if they just snap call you really quick, that means their range is pretty capped.
At
that
one
means they were really just trying to get cute with you. And I don't know why people do these really small 3-bets. Like they used to call them sweeteners when I first got to the card room when I was a kid.
That's right.
And essentially, I don't know if it's to like get you heads up. I guess I could see maybe this.
Dan Harrington brought this up in his first book, the big one that came out that was the Bible back in 2005, where he talked about how if you were in like early position, like third position, and a player under the gun had made like just a min open in a tournament, you could, Harrington on Hold'em, you could min raise because what you were doing was you were forcing all the players behind to get priced out. So instead of like having a hand that you wanted to call with, but you didn't want to be in there with 5 other players, like maybe you had like pocket 8s or 9s or something like that, or maybe you even had a hand as good as pocket jacks. Instead of making a large 3-bet and getting into a situation with somebody under the gun where their range should be better than yours, you could make this small 3-bet, and now the players behind you aren't facing a 2 big blind raise, they're facing a 3 or 4 big blind raise. And there is that 3-bet in there. So they're more inclined to fold better hands. And it was an interesting thing, that concept of sweeteners. Usually meant nothing, but this was a way to do that. Now, this is a different situation where there's no players behind. Like if we had raised and a player had, if you were sitting here and wanted to do that, then you could min raise and the players behind would go, fuck this. And they would just, fold out little shitty pairs and, king jacks and things like that really don't know where they're at post flop unless they really smash the board. So, but other than that, yeah, he's right. This is just a nothing, kind of
makes it a little less likely
move.
the big blind's going to call you. I don't know. But the thing about it is this tends to not be ace king. This tends to not be aces. This tends to not be kings. This tends to not be queens. This tends to not be jacks. So you can take those hands off right now. So you get this board. Now, ace queen, maybe he'd do this with. Ace king seems a little illogical. You would think he would 3-bet a little bit larger with ace king. So most likely, you're in the driver's seat right now. This is the best flop in the world for you. You have the hammer lock. You got to get the money in there any way you can. So what you're trying to do here is bet the largest amount that you think the most of his range will call. Because we really want to call at this point. So 2,253 here is about as much.
The thing to remember is at this point, there is no suited ace of clubs in his hand. There is no suited ace of hearts in his hand. There can be a suited ace of spades. Very true. So the ace-4 of spades, ace-3 of spades are most likely hands that are going to draw out on us in this scenario when he has an ace. And there can be the suited ace of diamonds. But those are not going to have an easy time continuing, although we are playing super small, so don't overcount that.
Much as you can bet, that still might get a call from like king 10 suited, like king 10 of spades, with the backdoor draw and the really good high card. Still might get a call from like 6-6, 7-7, 8-8. Now, you might be saying, do I really want to work that hard for those hands? Well, yes, because that's 4 big blinds right here. If you get 4 big blinds out of king 10 here, he needs to go runner to beat you. In 4 big blinds, the average win rate, for a tournament player is like 6 big blinds to 10 big blinds per 100. Like 10 big blinds is just like you're smashing the game, like you're destroying it. 6 big blinds would be pretty typical for most guys that are like slightly winning. This is a chance to just get like 4 right here on one hand. And we can go ahead and get it. And Dirty Dan here, now obviously we have very few hands on this person, but so far has been fairly active. So we can hope for some loose action here. So we get a call. Now when he calls you really quick, that often indicates I don't need to think about much. So that could be ace-5 or ace-2, but more often than not, people need to think about, do I want to raise with that hand? Do I want to slow play with it? Takes a little second. But then on this...
Another thing to remember is when people act quickly, it's either a very easy decision that they don't need to think about, or they're very experienced. And people at the micro stakes like this are not super experienced. One of the best bets that I get paid off playing 10NL on WSOP in the Cash Game Challenge is by acting super fast with my hands that I'm convinced are best. Like in this scenario, having, pocket 5s or whatever like that, betting super quick, like, because the other player is going to need time to think, and they're going to think you're just automatically firing. It's amazing how little people discount it when they give them that little timing tell of this guy's just full of shit, or he's just betting an ace. So when somebody has ace-king, they just pay you right off.
On this turn, the flush draw develops and he checks. So here, we're probably not getting another call from the king high. If we are going to get another call from... if we are going to get another call from like 6s, 7s, or 8s, it's really someone that just wants to gamble. So they're giving us some of the money, but it's a little more likely we're getting money right now from an ace-3, an ace-4, an ace-6, an ace-7, an ace-8, an ace-10. Maybe just a couple of... on occasion, you'll see like 10s and 8s get played this way. You would think the jacks, the queens, the kings would 3-bet bigger. So the question then becomes like, what's the biggest bet we can get called by the majority of his range? And
such a great question to ask yourself. Like, what is the most this person will give me? Like, it's so much better than if I bet here, what can call me? It's like, no. If the player already has made a mistake, what is the largest bet he will call continuing to make that mistake? It's a much better way of thinking.
And if you said 2,700, I see that. I think you're really working for the 6s to call. But I think 4,354, I think maximizes the amount of money you're getting from like the aces. And if you said a little bit bigger, you can go with that as well. I felt this bigger. Balanced the most between getting... Because the thing is, so far, this guy's played like half the hands at the table. There is still a chance you're going to get called by like a king high or like 6s or something like that. Or this guy could just have a total goofball. Like,
I'm zeroing in on 8s or 10s. I mean, originally I was thinking kings or queens because people do weird shit like that. But he's right. They're going to re-raise bigger pre because people don't want to get drawn out on with their aces or with their kings and queens. But I'm starting to zero in on 8s and 10s here.
Like 5-3 suited. And I just did not want to blast those hands off, but I also didn't want to get as much money as I could from aces. So something a little, I felt like this was the best of both worlds here with the 4-3, 5-4. I'm totally open to a bigger bet or a smaller bet. I think both have their merits. This is in the moment what I decided.
It sounds convoluted, but you have to remember, Assassinato voices every one of his internal thoughts, and this is kind of the way your brain works when you're playing poker, so I do love hearing his stream of consciousness.
Now, this 4 actually is not a terrific card. The card we would prefer like a queen here, because if he had ace queen, he was already beating us, and it's less likely he has it. Like when the 4 comes there, ace 4 just caught up on us. And
Yeah.
he has some goofball like 5-4 of diamonds. He obviously just got there. If he has like 3-3, he just got there. So he checks to us here, and the question then becomes, do you just want to check back? Now, if you guys want to make it a no limit hold'em, I can teach you this one thing that has really kept me going all these years. It's actually
Keep betting.
I quit my last real job on October 31st, Halloween 2006, and that was that date came up recently, like a Halloween. It's like, you know, it's been a while since it hit me that day when Halloween came up, like a little bit back. Like, wow, I've been doing this a while, right? And the only reason I haven't had a real job since the Bush administration is that you got to get value when it's out there. So is it,
Like I said, it's my favorite thing, man. It's the pinnacle of poker, is getting extra value when other people wouldn't.
possible this guy outdrew us? Yeah, that's totally possible. It could happen. It happens all the time. But what's more likely is this guy is playing for fun, and he's willing to call down still with ace 6, ace 7, ace 8, ace 10. He might be willing still to call with a small pair. Now the question is, how much is he going to call with those weaker aces? Probably not a whole lot. If you said bet 8,000 here, it's like, whew, I admire your gumption. I think there's a good chance you'll get a call from one of those weaker hands. I went for the gimme bet. I went for the gimme bet of 5,231 because I just didn't want him thinking, period. I thought 8,000 he might think about it. And I thought maybe I might just get lucky here and get called by something just patently absurd, which does happen a lot on some of the looser networks. Like you get called here and you see like 6-6, or you see king queen high, or you see some guy just really was in there to gamble, right? Or you see 5-6 suited, just a lot of hands that we don't want to give him a chance to fold. Whereas if you bet,
Players absolutely will do that because all they have to do is convince themselves that you don't have an ace, and you wouldn't bet a pair not as good as an ace. Like, people don't think you're going to bet 3 times with queens here. You know what I mean? Like, they're like, why would he do that? That's stupid. There's an ace out there. He must have just garbage nothing. So then they just call you with 4th pair, and you're just like, no, I actually have top pair. I've seen it many times. Usually it's in the situation where I have aces and the board is paired, and people are like, you don't have a 6, you know, if it's like 6-6-5, and then you just go bet.
I'm black.
And they're like, you know, they're like, he doesn't have a 6.
Wake
That's
up,
the
Daddy
only
Sean.
read they get, but you have to consider the entire range. So this is a good one to get called on for sure.
You're embarrassing me
one
running around like an
but
idiot in
nobody
your
plays.
trunks.
They're just like, I
Daddy,
gotta
chill.
see it. Right? If you said 8,000, I'm only getting called by an ace. I think that is merit. I think 12,000 is too much here. But people don't realize. They think like, oh, he bet one quarter.
Young Beast,
pot
the
here.
sounds
Is that
are
dirty
off.
enough for you?
This is like, what is
What
it?
do I
The-
do?
The big one is like 650. What is this? 8 big blinds? Like that's your win rate for 100 hands. Like it's okay, it's not that much, but it's close. Like it's a lot. Like this could be your win rate for 100 hands. This river bet, and this guy's probably not even thinking about it. And boom. Look at this, because we took the initiative pre-flop. If we had just called pre-flop and not done that dumb little 4-bet pre-flop that kind of lets us know his range is capped and we don't have to worry too much about the ace-queen, ace-king. This is a 30,000 chip pot, so 15,000 of those chips were his. So we got over 20 big blinds from this gentleman just because we used a little bit of creativity and we weren't going to accept that we weren't going to get value at any point. We didn't accept like pot controlling. Like pot controlling is really tempting because if we ever bet our ace jack here on the ace 5-2 and we get check raised, it feels awful if we end up folding through some dramatic chain of events, right? But That doesn't happen that often. What happens more often is a guy's playing for fun, and he's just goofing off, and he gets trapped, and he makes...
That was something I had to really learn, was that the other players are not... They're not studying. You know what I'm saying? Like, the majority of players, I mean, everybody knows this, the majority of poker players lose. And they lose for a really long time because they don't put in the work. You don't get better just by playing poker. Those days are done. You have to study now. You have to understand ranges. You have to do work and, you know, study things like this. And when players don't do that, they are gamblers. They're the ones that we're there to beat. So you can't sit there and impose your thought process on other players until they've shown you that they have that. And this is somebody who's just having some fun. You know what I'm saying? And that's perfectly fine. These are what keep the game alive, these situations. And we can sit there and, you know, as more experienced poker players and go, well, that's fucking insane. Why would he even 3-bet that? It doesn't matter to him. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it might be what I'm trying to do for a living, but this guy has a job, you know, and he's just unwinding or whatever like that. And he's like, I want to see here, and I got an ace. And then when he gets beat, he goes, that was unlucky. Doesn't think another thought about it. Just thinks that, it's a cooler. This isn't a cooler. This is a well thought out hand, but he doesn't know that. So, you know, don't see monsters under the bed that you put there, because not everybody thinks like you.
Makes a pair, and he knows that he shouldn't be raising his pair. So he just calls down, and then that's how we get 20, 30 big blinds. And then we can use these chips to, now look at our stack. We have 53,000, and it's going to be troublesome for the 20,000 chip stack, 31,000 chip stack, 17,000 chip stack, 12,000 chip stack, and 18,000 chip stack to deal with us, because our chips aren't worth as much as their chips are worth ICM-wise. So we can use our chips that aren't...
Meaning, because they can't eliminate me, I can eliminate them. And the fact that I can put all this pressure on them, they have to be more precious with their stacks. At 50, 30,000 chips, I don't. I have a lot more leeway. I now have... what, fucking just like 70, 80 blinds or something like this, like that. I can fucking run this table over until somebody gives me a reason not to. So that's really the thing that we're talking about here, is gaining these pots is so important, because it increases your longevity in the tournament, because, you know, you got more gas in the car, you can go further. That's just the way that it goes.
Worth as much to threaten their stacks a lot of the time. And that makes things difficult. We can start using the 3-bets, we can start using the double barrels, we can start using the check raises to threaten their chips. The other way we know he most likely doesn't have a 2-pair is when this flush draw develops on the turn, and he just check calls really quickly. Usually when a flush draw develops and someone has 2-pair, they really have to think about it. So the one hand that makes a lot...
Because they're trying to decide if they need to protect against that flush draw, right? Because especially when I have the ace of hearts in my hand, if somebody has ace-5 here, they're probably going to go for the check raise, just because they don't want to seem like a fool when the ace or when the heart comes off on the river, and then they just got beat without putting any additional pressure on us.
A lot of sense that could have just beat us is ace-4 suited, or just, I guess, a bizarre 5-4 or something like that. But most of the time, I didn't think we had a whole lot to worry about there, so we did have to go for 3 barrels.
Interesting, very interesting kind of thing. He's talking about a super micro. This is a 50-cent buy-in, but this does, I think, exist all the way up to probably up to the $5 limit. So I think you would see stuff like this at, you know, $5 buy-ins occasionally, but below that you'll definitely see it. I have seen it. You see this in 20 or in 10 and L too, cash games. It just, sometimes you see dumb shit like this. So that's just kind of the way it is. I'm going to go ahead and raid you guys out. I really appreciate you guys being here. I'm going to be back later today playing cash games, but I got a lot of stuff to do around the house. Got to cook, got to do laundry, shit like that. But stick around for the host. Really great streamer, very talented. Not a poker person, but keep an open mind. They're a lot of fun. And yeah, they should be going out in 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.